Hey everybody, this is Andy Hall, and you're watching Best Advice Ever, where guests come on the show to talk about the best advice they ever got regarding their personal lives, as well as the best tip they ever got concerning their profession. Our guest today is the incredible, fantastic Andre Salais. You may know Andre from being on the Naked Diner podcast. He is a political consultant with what company? I'll tell you. Method Social Kinetics. He also manages the Comedy Project. That's a little Freudian slip there. The Atheist Candidates Project, though I imagine there is a fair amount of comedy while working in politics, sir.
There always is. It's kind of gallows humor a little bit, though, right? It can be a pretty cynical environment, and I fall squarely within, as far as my overall philosophical worldview is concerned, I fall squarely within the absurdist camp. So, my brain kind of operates like I'm working in a MASH hospital, which is fine by me. So,
now that the midterms are over, they've been over for a while, and the general election is some time away. Are you busy? Are you just doing a lot of road work for the general election, or what's going on?
Yeah, it's always a build-up process between elections. So obviously, most of the money kind of disappears in the intervening period between election cycles. So I've got a couple projects I'm working on right now. One of them is obviously the Atheist Candidates Project, and trying to bring in a little money there, expand the social media reach, and recruit new candidates for the next cycle.
Sure.
I've been meeting with a number of prospective candidates, and as is always the case, a lot of folks, find out what it takes to run a campaign, and it's. Can I swear on this show? I don't know if that's permissible. Is it?
I tell people we shouldn't be swearing, and I think I've only sworn twice in 5 episodes, and that's really good for me, as you well know.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, it scares the life out of them. We'll put it that way.
Yes.
And a few people have to step back and then consider, okay, I want to do this, but maybe I need to take a little time and prepare for the amount of effort that it's going to take on my part and time it's going to take on my part. And that's part of this intervening period. That's just how it goes. It's prepping people who have considered running and finding new people to run. We actually have another person who's expressed interest in running in Cincinnati, Ohio, who I'm looking forward to getting in touch with, especially with all of the abortion bills popping up all over the country. It's time for us to lay a foundation in the Midwest. But the other project I'm working on is something to help fix kind of the issue with developing the electorate between cycles, and it's a technology-oriented project that will allow us to continue to develop the electorate and maintain communication with voters over the course of that gap between election cycles, so we can, instead of just talking to the people we know are going to vote during the election, we're developing new voters for the upcoming election. And it'll be the candidates with the Atheist Candidates Project who would get the first access to that tool.
Sounds very exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's in development, but keep your fingers crossed. And it's moving forward. Yeah.
All right,
meeting should be. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, you go ahead.
I was just saying I should be meeting with an investor about it next week, so I'm looking forward to that.
Very exciting. When there's money involved, there's always excitement.
Yes.
So tell me about advice. You can start off with either the best professional advice you ever got or the best personal advice you ever got to help you be a better person.
Oh man. So I've had the good fortune of knowing a lot of people who are much wiser than me. And the way I kind of view it is, if I'm not surrounding myself with people who know more than I do, or have accrued greater wisdom than me in whatever particular area they happen to be experts in, then I'm doing myself a disservice. I should never be the smartest person in the room 100% of the time, because I'm not going to learn anything. I'm not going to improve. And I think a bit of funny advice that I got from Dr. Brian Dilley, he's a professor of political science, was never work harder than you have to, and never live in California.
That's fascinating.
Those were his 2 pieces. Excuse me for a sec here. Thank goodness for that mute button. His two pieces of advice wrapped together, and text of writing policy. So when you have he teaches the United Nations Studies program, and when you're writing policy as a country, as a delegate to whichever organ of the UN you are a part of, you are writing from that country's perspective, right? What they want to achieve, what their goals are, and it's one of the few circumstances in which plagiarism is actually encouraged, right? Because you don't want to diverge from your country's official policy. Right. But the never work harder than you have to is more of a, work smarter. Find the work that has been done by people who are smarter than you and build upon it. Don't reinvent the wheel if you don't have to, right? Do
you find a lot of smart people want to reinvent the wheel because they think they can do it better?
I don't know. I think that there's a difference between intelligence and wisdom, and I think a lot of wise people are inclined to not reinvent the wheel, whereas a lot of people who are too smart for their own good, but perhaps not quite as wise as they may wish to be, might be overly invested in their own capability and just make things a lot harder on themselves. But I'm no expert in this, so take this with a grain of salt. I'm not a psychologist,
sure.
Right? And I think I often waver between those two things, right? I decide I'm going to take on a challenge that I probably shouldn't be taking on, and it would have been easier if I had bothered to leverage the accomplishments of other people, and right. Then it bites me in the ass, right? But this is also part of growing and developing as a professional and personally, is learning how to work smarter, I suppose, learning how to leverage other people. We live in a society. It's how it works, right? No, I did not build it on my own, right? But I think the other piece of advice to get to the absurdism component of it is, and this getting back to the sort of gallows humor, and also being careful not to sound like a Republican who suggests bootstrapping is the way to do everything. It's would you rather be miserable on your own terms or on somebody else's?
Oh, that's pretty. Now, how did you find that? Who told you that?
I actually don't remember.
Oh, wow.
I don't remember. It could have been a few places. It might have been a book, actually, but it's something that kind of stuck in my head, and it's like I can go work at say a call center where I hate my life and I'm forced to push products on people who don't need them, and whatever it may be. And like call center environments are often the kind of environment that kind of sucks the life out of you because it's exhausting. But I can be moderately financially comfortable there and be miserable on someone else's terms, or I can be the architect of my own misery, so to speak, and know that at least if I'm struggling, if things aren't going as swimmingly as I would like them to be, I am working towards something that matters to me personally.
Now, here's a stupid question. Was there a point in your life that you weren't aware of that rule? In other words, you were working in a call center, you were doing you were miserable on somebody else's farm, basically.
Yes, and I think this happens to everybody at some point, and a lot of people don't shake it. It's the whole being dead at 30 but not buried scenario, right? Where you've essentially accepted that life is suffering and there's nothing you can do about it. And to some degree, again, getting back to absurdism and the pointlessness of it all, and sometimes you're just going through the motions to be able to afford the next bag of rice. Yeah. Right. That may very well be the case to some degree, that suffering is just a part of existing. But if I have to suffer, if I have to be exhausted and in some way miserable, I think that misery comes with, I would feel better about it if I get to select how it happens. It's the being able to exert some degree of control. And
that's exactly what I was going to say. You have a person has a greater sense of agency, of ownership on their own life.
And agency matters. Like if we feel like we have no control over our own life, then like what's the point of it, right? And I think that's where for me I don't see any ultimate meaning in the universe, and I mean in the ultimate sense, right? There's nothing out there that is assigning us some greater meaning or value. Life itself, our existence, is ultimately meaningless, and that sounds bleak, right? But
Right.
that sounds incredibly bleak, and I
You got
come
to
at
put a
this
bow on that somehow.
I come at this from a really unusual position, and I think someone out there may be able to relate a little bit. But for me, like it may be ultimately meaningless, but the only thing that gives it meaning is what we want from it. It's our experience of it. The fact that there is no ultimate meaning doesn't mean that I don't still enjoy a ripe mango, that I don't still want to accomplish things, that I don't still have empathy for other human beings. All of these things, and this is one of the ironies of it, right? It's the great contradiction. All of these things still matter to us, even though in the ultimate sense they don't matter, and that's enough. To me, that's sufficient. I don't need ultimate meaning. I what we have is enough. But on the other side of that, the enjoyability of it. I think I've told you this one before, but like in order, like you have to have 14 billion years of the development of a universe, from a big bang to the expansion to the coalescence of hydrogen atoms into stars that then fuse atoms together, creating all of the minerals that we need for a human being to exist, so that someone can one day make a dildo that's shaped like a dolphin. Like you don't get that without first creating a universe. And you don't get a pet rock without there first being a universe. And there is something fundamentally ridiculous about that. And that alone makes it worth the experience.
Sure.
Right? That is just enjoyable.
Have you ever passed along the wisdom of you'd rather be miserable working on your own farm than anybody else's? Have you shared that with anyone?
I think so. Not in necessarily those exact terms, but again, it's not so much about the misery as much as it is about having a degree of agency in your trajectory, right?
Yeah.
Because if my entire life is wrapped up in some business that I really don't want anything to do with, and I'm not going in a direction that I want to be going, well, I'm essentially running in place, right? I'm not accomplishing anything that I want to be achieving. If I'm going to be tired and I'm going to be like eating beans out of a can is the one I like to go for, right?
Right.
If I'm going to be as close to miserable as we can get definitionally, then I would rather be doing that in a manner that is serving what I actually want to achieve.
It strikes me that living that kind of lifestyle is like an insurance policy against mental illness in some way. I mean, no one can really protect themselves against mental illness 100%, but good sleep, good relationships, good diet, exercise, all that stuff is important. But also this sense of agency and about accepting the fact that life is going to give you tablespoons of misery, one after the other.
Yeah.
But if you're the one giving, once again, this image, this is wrong. But if you're the one feeding yourself at least a measure of that.
Well, and like when I said I wanted to be careful about not sounding like I'm saying bootstrapping is the way to go on everything, it's not.
Yeah.
And we all have varying degrees of privilege, and we live in a society that is fundamentally unfair because capitalism. So far, it's the best bad system we've got, but it's still fundamentally unfair. But in spite of that unfairness, I would still rather be doing this. And I had when I said dead by 30 and not yet buried was like sort of the standard of looking at like what failing to take some degree of agency can do. I think that I was kind of reaching that point where I was approaching dead by 30 and not buried. When everything was kind of coming down around me, as life goes, when it rains, it pours.
Oh, yeah.
and turning into that little dog sitting in the burning coffee shop saying, "This is fine.
No problem.
No problem. This is okay." And I was rescued from it by an opportunity that I knew would bring about instability. And it was an opportunity to get back into political work full time. And I took it. I jumped on it, and it was actually
Was it a mentor who came to you, or was it what kind of opportunity? Talk about that.
a friend.
Hmm.
A friend and someone I look up to. It's always good to have friends you can look up to.
Yeah.
But basically looking to hire for a position on a team that got my foot back in the door, and I knew that there was no runway for me afterwards, that I wouldn't have a job after it was done, and I did it anyway, and I made it work, and I'm frankly like happier with the decision to have made it work. But I found myself in scenarios where, like, before I was becoming exhausted from a regular 40-hour work week. Well, now I've got a week that's 105 hours and it's 117 degrees outside while we're taking people to go knock on voters' doors, and we're just delirious from the heat and melting into my concrete floor because it's the only thing that's cold within 30 miles, and that was still better. Because
That's powerful.
I felt like it meant something. I felt like it was my decision to be doing it. I would rather work the 105-hour weeks in the middle of summer, being burned to death by the sun and risking melanoma, on my own terms, and instead of working in a cubicle doing something that I find to be fundamentally pointless.
When you explain
even making more money.
When you explain that point of view to friends or family members, what kind of responses do you get?
Some people think you're just crazy. And I think that, like, there's a little bit of wisdom built into the idea that if you want to change the world, you can't be doing what everyone else is doing. Yeah. Right. If you're following the behavior of everybody else, what people are sort of the view of labor and the value of labor and how that relates to happiness and what the prevailing paradigm is on that, then you're not going to disrupt anything. You're just going to fall in line with the rest of the herd. And the herd is a perfectly comfortable and safe place to be, and a lot of people like it there. There's nothing wrong with it. Sometimes it's nice to have, a whole bunch of other people doing the same thing as you and feeling like you're supported because this is the norm, right?
Right.
And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I fundamentally dislike that. So there's nothing about what I do that doesn't look insane to a lot of people because It's abnormal. It's unstable. I'm sure not that I fit within this category, but I'm sure lots of people looked at like Steve Jobs like he was a lunatic when him and Wozniak were building a computer in a garage out of wood. Like there's the idea that the most valuable tech company on the planet started with a computer that was in a wood box. Seems kind of ridiculous. And I'm certain that people thought that at the time, too.
Sure.
So.
Good piece of advice, my friend.
I hope so.
Yeah. If someone's listening to this and living the cubicle life and it's slowly killing them, I hope something that you said there resonated with them so that they can get out of that kind of dead by 30 spiral. Or feeling like you're dead by 30 spiral.
And you can be much happier slowly killing yourself doing something you want to do.
Well, I've heard on very good information that we all die at some point anyway.
Uh-huh.
And one of the Greek philosophers, I can't recall who, said that just because you live a long life doesn't mean it was a good life. Longevity isn't particularly indicative. I'm paraphrasing a lot of having a meaningful life. But it sounds like you're going to live a long time doing what you want to do because
Yeah.
you're not eating out of beans right now. You look fairly healthy. The
I
times,
hope so.
yeah, you're doing pretty good for
Yeah.
yourself.
Not too bad. Well, and like I guess on the kill yourself with something else that makes you happy, right? It's like risk, I think, is one of the things that scares people into staying in their lane. And I recognize that if you have a lot of money, you can fail safely, right?
Yeah,
Which is why, I mean, look, this is the person. He was at one point the worst businessman in the country with how much money that he lost, but he had so much money that he could just keep failing and still succeed. Right? That's not an option for someone who makes $40,000 a year and wants to start a restaurant.
yeah,
But if you're not willing to step outside of that comfort zone, you're never going to know if you can succeed. You're never going to have the opportunity to achieve that happiness. You're just always going to be in a position where you've never done the thing that you want to do. So on the risk there, I'll use a food analogy, right? We always see
yeah,
these articles pop up about some carcinogen that exists in something that we like, whether it's strawberries or coffee or
right.
red wine. Everything to some degree seems to cause or have a risk factor for cancer, right?
Sure.
Just drink the damn coffee. Do you like it? Are you really going to make yourself miserable because the coffee might cause cancer when you're 80?
Right.
Yeah, so that's my thing about it. Like
Uh,
if we are doing so much to protect ourselves from the instability that we can't even remotely achieve the kind of happiness or life experience that we want, then like we have to sit down and ask ourselves which is more important. Let's weigh this here. Do I want the stability that I'm unhappy with, or do I want to take this risk and at least be able to be happy that I tried something and failed? Because like, people are afraid of failure, but the failure portion of that, like the fact that you tried and failed, is something to be proud of in and of itself. And I will be happy about every failure that I've had because of it.
There must be an academic out there somewhere who specializes in the science of failure. In other words, how to fail without completely destroying your life or the people around you. There has to be someone out there.
I'm going to say that there's like anyone who's studied Amway is probably going to offer a cautionary tale on how to fail without destroying your relationships and yourself.
Okay, all right.
Don't do MLMs is the message here. Like,
Oh, yeah.
MLMs destroy relationships.
Well, it's baked into the system.
It is.
It's baked into the system of yeah. Every
It's
once in
like
a while.
Scientology, but for capitalism. It's very strange.
Oh, it's a horrible mixture of insanity and Americanism and capitalism and that kind of mixture is toxic, and it does undermine relationships, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And mental stability.
Do literally anything else.
Right.
Anything else. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good place to end right there. I think that's a good place to end. We covered two really good pieces of advice. If there is an academic watching right now who is specializes in the psychology or how to fail without destroying yourself, please shoot me a line. I think they'd be great talking with you.
Yeah, I think that'd be fantastic. And as always, go read the works of Albert Camus if you're interested in absurdism.
Yeah.
So.
Sure enough. So where can people find you online?
So I can be found on Twitter at Radio Atheist, I think is what it still is. You can find me on Facebook. I don't really use it all that much anymore, but find me there anyway. That's fine. Atheistcandidates.com, methodsk.com. Those are all of the places I kind of haunt on the internet. So, or just type my name into Google. That works too. You'll find all sorts of stuff there.
If people are thinking about running in an election in 2020, what should they be doing right now?
So do you mean this in the larger sense, or do you mean this as atheists?
Let's go with the larger sense.
Okay. So right now, you should probably be getting in touch with your local legislative district party organization. or your local precinct party club if they've got it. But every legislative district in the country has a party organization where they gather often once a month. Some are more active than that. And they'll just meet up and talk about what they need to do to, turn out people for the next election. They'll hear from candidates. You need to go there, talk to those people, find out if someone else is already planning on running for the thing that you want to run for.
Yeah.
And like start attending those meetings. Actually be a good member of that community, and tell them you want to run, and have them help you develop support. Get in touch with your local party, but like the first place to go are those LD meetings, those legislative district meetings, because those are going to be the people who are going to be walking for you and calling for you. They're going to be able to connect you with professionals.
Yeah.
Or you could shoot me an email. It's andre@methodsk.com.
Excellent. Well, thanks for coming on. The best advice ever, sir.
Awesome. Happy to be here.
Okay. Well, thanks again.